I made a game in 24 hours was yesterday. In this video I'll try to make 50 games in 8 hours. Let's run the math. 50 games in 8 hours means 10 minutes per game. That is pretty crazy. Let's start the timer for the first game. I did some preparations for this challenge. I've already prepared a couple of materials. I've imported a couple of scripts because speed matters here. I did not prepare any game ideas, so coming up with 50 game ideas will be part of the challenge. I created a cube, gave it a rigid body, gave it my movement script, and tada, we had a player character. Now it's flying into the abyss. Damn. The clock was ticking, so I got started with the enemies. Created something that spawns enemies, and created something that spawns the something that spawns enemies, so more and more enemies are spawned over time. And then... no, just kidding, that was actually it. Oh, okay. So they can spawn all the way over here. Oh. And that's time. I was quite happy with what I created, but then it dawned on me that I literally had to make 49 more games. I restarted the timer and off we go. But luckily I have a trick. It's called recycling.
No, that doesn't count.
Yes, it does. My second game ended up looking like this. Instead of dodging blocks, you have to collect them. Then 2 blocks spawn at the same time and you're dead. Great game. Great game. I already kind of suspected that coming up with 50 simple game ideas would be very tricky, which is why I tried to get the most out of every idea before moving on. Next idea is... very different game, you'll see. I'll just take the camera, put it inside the player.
The next game, the game is completely like in the first and the second, but it is a horizontal game, so you shift it 90 degrees.
Genius. Game 3 and 4 are the first-person variants of Game 1 and 2. They are a lot more fun in first person, so I'm glad I tried this out. Lol. I have to get started with the next game. I kept the player character and just allowed it to move in 4 directions this time. I quickly built some gates the player can fly through and added some giant box colliders outside of the gates that restart the level when you touch them. Wrote a script that speeds up the game over time, and there we go. You can fly through gates now. Game 5 complete. Game 6 has the same concept but with Flappy Bird controls. Now try to guess what the next game will be. Yep, I made Flappy Bird 2D. Surprise! Falling behind on time was slowly becoming the new standard, cause every time the timer ran out I instantly restarted it. Come on, I still need to build a level for this. The goal of game 8 is to get the ball into the basket. Nothing happens if you do, but hey, it counts, okay, it counts.
I guess there will be at least 5 ball games after that.
I think so as well. For game number 9, I once again just put the camera inside the ball and turned it into a first-person game. The best strategy is just to hold the forward button and never let go. Oh, I can just fly. Come on, no! And the same counts for this game, but for the sake of this video, I'll just pretend like you have to solve this very slowly and carefully. It's pretty fascinating how much more engaging the 3D versions of games tend to look. That might not always be the case, but I still remember when we made Islanders, we almost certainly wanted to make it a 2D game. In the end, 3D was the correct choice to make, of course. So I guess the lesson here is try out different perspectives if you can. Experiments like that are usually not a big time investment, but they can really pay off. Anyway, I was 1 hour 40 into the challenge. There were still 40 games left. And I'm not gonna lie, it already started to get a bit exhausting. This is a pretty mentally draining challenge because you have to stay so on edge. The timer is constantly ticking. Every mistake can throw you behind and you barely have any time to think about the next game you want to make. I actually have an idea for how I can recycle one of the early games we made. In this game you have to click on all the cubes before they touch the ground. Then I started remaking some simple mobile games like this one here where you have to fit as many cubes as possible onto the ball. It really seems like coming up with variations of existing hyper-casual games is a great way to come up with new ones. Game 15 is another variation of the same concept, but this time cubes are spawned in regular intervals and you can only control the rotation of the ball. Isn't it crazy how much you can do with just a handful of simple scripts? You pretty much just need a movement script, one that restarts the level when you collide with something, a spawner script you can use to spawn stuff like enemies, maybe a script that can enable and disable other scripts when you press a button. In this game there are 2 scripts. One moves you in this direction, the other one moves you in that direction, and whenever you press space, I just switch between the two. And it's not like these scripts have to be super complicated either. Most of them are pretty basic, to be honest. Basic enough that I can show you how to write them in this Unity tutorial. In this game, you have to destroy all blue blocks without any orange blocks touching the ground. So this game literally just needs two scripts, one for deleting objects and one for collision detection. I'm looking for another game to to clone. What about the one where you fly through tunnels? I'm lying, I just wanna play it. I don't have any ideas. This will be turned into the player. Go into super try-hard mode. Ooh, 2 minutes left. What do we do with this? Okay, how do I finish this one as quickly as possible? Yeah, I guess that's this game. So there I was, only 17 games in and already struggling super hard to come up with new game ideas. In this one you have to get one of the orange cubes to the other side with as few shots as possible. Then another brutally hard one-button game. I think I'll never be able to get past this part.
How the hell do you keep messing up the end?
Then came the obligatory shooter game. Oh. Which ended up looking like this. I didn't have enough time to limit the fire rate, so whenever one of your projectiles reaches the other side, you lose as well. Ironically, the bug where you just push the enemies back instead of destroying them made for an even more interesting game. I really like this one. About 3 hours and 40 minutes in at this point. I almost feel like the lower I was running on ideas, the more interesting my ideas got. They just became a bit more spontaneous. Although I had pretty much done all of the super obvious things by now, except for the 3D version of the shooter games. Another physics game. This time you have to get rid of the light blue boxes by making them collide. An epic isometric platformer. Did that already convey the correct excitement factor? Let me try again. Epic isometric platformer. Still 25 games and less than 4 hours left. My brain felt pretty smoothie boozy by now. But I managed to keep it together and make this game where you have to guide a ball through a labyrinth by tilting the platform. I really don't know how, but somehow the ideas kept flowing. The magic of time pressure, probably. Time pressure really helps to put your perfectionism aside and just create something, whatever that might be. In this case, a puzzle game where you have to get the red block out of the level, or even something as simple as a dumb little timing game. Each idea you have will lead to another one down the line. In fact, this already gives me an idea for the next game. In game 30, you try to keep the balls on the platform for as long as possible. Even though this is just a pretty meh game, it led to one of my favorite games of this entire challenge. The controls of game 31 just feel fantastic. The gameplay is pretty unique and it would make for a great mobile game. By the way, if you wanna use any of the ideas shown in this video, feel free to do so. If anything in this video inspired you to create something that's epic, absolutely fine with me. Oh, and the game was an absolute disaster in 3D. But I guess you have to try everything out. If this entire challenge taught me one thing, then it's probably that it's really worth it to try stuff out. There are a lot of experiments you can run with very little effort that can really have a positive impact on your game. Why is it that we try one thing and then just stick with it? Why don't we try more things? In this game, blue blocks float upwards, orange ones fall down, and you can switch them between the two states. The goal is to create as many orange blocks as possible without any of them touching the ground. Quite fun, pretty successful experiment, but then I turned it into a less successful experiment where you have to use the same mechanic to dodge enemies coming in from the side. But that's exactly the point of experiments. If just 1 out of 10 ends up working out, it's already worth it. This one, for example, turned out to be another one of my absolute favorites, trying to climb those crazy spinning platforms. I'm not crazy, you're crazy. Okay, let's see if it works. I should be allowed to put them here, yeah. Made a game about sorting balls by their color. Another escape the room puzzle where you're not allowed to touch anything, which then inspired this game because I thought the look was pretty cool. Another Flappy Bird-like with extremely weird controls. 7 hours in at this point, and the last 10 games were just... Here we go, last 10 games. I have absolutely no idea what to create anymore, but I'll just do something. I have no idea.
Is it a face, what you're creating?
Yeah, and the goal is to click the nose.
I like that game. But I want that it makes some random noises if I click it. Or it could start looking annoyed.
Costs too much time.
Okay.
Despite the great suggestions of my sister, I barely had enough time to make the nose turn red when you click it. Oh, Please don't crash. In game 42, a new player character is created every time you press to the right, which makes you think quite carefully about every single button press. The last couple of games were just so hard to make because I was mentally already so exhausted. Here we have another game about sorting colored balls with really weird controls, a sumo wrestling game where you have to push the other balls off the platform, and an even harder version where you have to push them into the corners. At this point, my only goal was to make it through the challenge alive. I made this pretty nice looking, but also pretty basic line runner game. A split screen game where you control 2 balls at once. That was a bit confusing, so I made another version where both balls are moving in the same direction, and that was much better.
What if we put a layer on top of it? Whoa!
What's happening?
Whoa! Yes! Yes!
I don't think I need to tell you that Game 49 clearly is the biggest masterpiece of them all. There was only one way I could possibly top that. But before I show you the last game, I want to call you all out. Can you make 50 games in one day? If you make a video like this, I will link it in the end card of this video. I doubt any of you will be brave enough, but the offer stands. I'm possessed by a demon, LOL. Please let me up. Challenge complete, I think. In total, it took me a bit longer than 8 hours to complete all 50 games. Here's the last one, which is essentially a gambling game. And while this one might not be the best, there are some other games I'm very proud of. Some ideas I would have never found without this challenge. This entire challenge is just a love letter to game development. I love making games, and I hope I can pass that on to you. Take care, everybody.